Hello, it's great to be with you here today for our cooking series with Global Cleveland for Welcoming Week happening in this wonderful, wonderful season of welcoming international newcomers to Cleveland. We're thrilled this morning. We have a native Clevelander who is living her best life in Italy and somebody who has brought so many wonderful things to our community and introduced so many people through travel, and someone who has been working with us on providing a wonderful experience for people to visit our sister city in Italy, Vicenza. It gives me great pleasure and honor to introduce our cook of the day, the person who's going to bring us through the cultural and gastronomic history of the glory of Italy, Diana. If you could please introduce yourself, let us know where you're from, and let us know where you are right now.
Okay, good morning, buongiorno. I'm Diana Maiola, live from Rome, Italy, and I'm thrilled to be a part of this initiative. I'm so excited to always support Global Cleveland. All of you feel like family to me, and that's a great feeling. And I'm going to share just a few little tips and, some cooking suggestions. I'm going to make a traditional pasta today. That's traditional to the Puglia region of Italy, which is in the southern part of the boot, if you can imagine the heel of Italy. Puglia, that's where it's at. My maternal side of my family is from there. So my grandparents, my mother were from the Puglia area. So I'm very proud to promote the recipes that are so special and coveted there. And the recipe today is called Orecchiette. Orecchiette is a very typical pasta of the Puglia region, and it can be made in a million different ways. I'm going to do kind of a summer version, if you will. The traditional version is with either cime di rape. Cime di rape are what we know as rapini, if you know what rapini are, kind of like a loose leafy broccoli. That's a very traditional way of eating orecchiette, but it's also something I grew up with on Sundays. My grandmother would make them homemade. We'd help on Sunday morning, and we'd have them with sauce, of course, and meatballs and braciole and all that. But I'm going to do a very light summer version with zucchini. And then I'm going to show a little variation that you can add a little bit of sausage to it as well. So just how you can change up the dish.
Dana, could you tell us a little bit? Thank you. That sounds, you're making all of our mouths water here with that deliciousness. I noticed behind you, you have some beautiful art, and then I think you have some of the ingredients that you're going to be using. And it feels, you're making everybody feel like they're in your home, which is part of your magic. But could you walk us through this beautiful, what we're looking at?
So, the most important thing I think with cooking, and I'm not a trained expert when it comes to cooking. I grew up in the kitchen at the side of my grandparents, my grandmother, my mother, my aunts. I was blessed to have women in my family that were amazing cooks. You could task them with feeding an army, and the army would walk away very happy, I think. So they were always in the kitchen, and I grew up in the kitchen as well. And the most important thing to keep in mind is always the freshest ingredients possible. I have a home in the mountains outside of Rome, about 2.5 hours southeast. And every time I go there, I'm always gifted with something special. So like this garlic here, this came from one of my aunts. So they never send me back to Rome, empty handed. So that's fresh. It's organic, homegrown. Then I have some zucchini that are from an organic farm here. They're a little bit on the small side, but they're delicious because they have less water when they're smaller. So you have more flavor. These are lemons. These two large ones are lemons from the Amalfi Coast, specifically from Sorrento. And if you could only smell them, they're just amazing. It's a sweet, sour smell that these lemons possess that you don't get that everywhere. These two little baby lemons are from my balcony. So that's as big as my lemons get on my balcony, but that's okay. So we have fresh basil, and then we have, this is modica di pane. So this is basically the inside of the bread. Not the crust, the inside, the soft part, which when it's a day old, it's best to use for different recipes. You can buy breadcrumbs in the grocery store, of course, but when you have day old bread, it's amazing to be able to take that and use it and give it new life. Okay. And this is what poor recipes from the past were based on. Never throwing anything out, just using as much as you could. And so the molica di pane, that's from bread from yesterday. I took the molica, the inside of the bread, and just threw it in the food processor, pulsed it a few times, and you get a more hearty breadcrumb. And I'm going to be using that later to top our pasta, okay? But it can also be used as stuffing for peppers and so many other things that you might use breadcrumbs for. If that makes sense.
Diana, you were saying, every time you go see, your family, you get to bring things back.
Yes.
Are there specific memories that you have about this dish and maybe when your family prepared it or things around the dinner table that you'd want our viewers to know about, because it feels very much like cooking is a multidimensional, in eating is a multidimensional aspect of Italian culture. It's bringing people together and talking about the things that are most important. Any memory or anything that jumps out at you that we should know about as we're about to prepare this amazing dish?
Yes. Again, this is something we used in the summer because it was lighter, it was fresher, and you're using what was available and what was in season. So trying not to force nature, if that makes sense, because, my grandparents grew zucchini, so it was plentiful. So, okay, let's be creative. How can we use it? Whatever was excess, they would can it or preserve it. So, again, it's just maximizing what you have at the moment. So, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. It does.
The Orecchiette pasta, which I will show you shortly,
yep.
Is again such a that really is the memory, the pasta itself, because it's such a tradition of the Pugliese people. Mm-hmm. And making it on Sunday mornings by hand with my grandmother was wonderful, and she loved to have us help. Because especially when we were little, you had small hands, so you were a little more nimble, and you could get just the right curve on the pasta. And so it's just little things like that bring me back to like the St. Rocco's area where my grandparents lived. And just the house was always filled with people. It was a tiny house, but it was always open. And, the uncles used to come in the morning to have their cafe corretto, their little cafe with coffee, the espresso with a little shot of whiskey or grappa or something like that. And then the aunts would start cooking. And, so Aunt Anna was on West 34th, I think it was. Trent, sorry, she was on Trent. And she was making focaccia, and, a cousin would come over on their bicycle with a big hot focaccia. And then we'd send something else back. So it was always this exchange and sharing of food, because that's how you express your love,
Yes. And speaking of love, I love your pots and pans, and it looks like you've got everything ready to go here.
I do. So what I'm doing right now, I'm just prepping a little bit of sausage here. Let's see. So what I wanted to do was show you how versatile this dish can be. So again, the main thing we're going to do is eat it with, or cook it with zucchini. But if it's wintertime and you have some zucchini and you want to make a little variation, you can saute a little bit of sausage, okay, and you can crumble that onto the pasta as well. So again, it's so versatile. If you have fresh shrimp, you can complement the zucchini dish with the shrimp. Okay, that's another favorite of mine. So if you just want to kick it up a little bit, it's all possible, okay, to do it that way. I'm going to grab a little cover for this. One moment. This Domus Pacis is my private label olive oil that I have been bringing in from the Puglia area to Cleveland. And actually not just Cleveland, because we have clients all over the United States with the travel business, and dozens, hundreds actually have taken part in in the olive oil. So we're very excited about this. So Domus Pacis, house of peace. That's what Domus Pacis means in Latin. And these are basically monocultivar, so single cultivar varieties of olive oil. One is a Corentina and one is Rolla. And these are both wonderful olives that are grown in the Puglia region. The Olierola comes from kind of the panhandle, if you will. The region of Puglia is long and slender, kind of like the state of Florida. And where Florida has that little panhandle, Puglia has a panhandle. And it's a very rocky, mountainous area with an amazing coastline. And there's a type of olive that grows there called Olierola garganica. And this is just smooth, it's earthy, it has this wonderful herbal taste. I love it on salad, mixed with lemon on a salad or over some grilled fish. Absolutely phenomenal. It's so versatile, and I'm going to use it with cooking the zucchini today. And then there's the coratina. The coratina is kind of the mother of all olive oils, and it is has a little more of a bite to it. Okay, it stands out. It's very pronounced. It's great on grilled meats or in a bean dish. Just a great finishing oil. Again, also excellent in salads, though, or on grilled vegetables. So it's just about bringing something extremely wholesome and high quality to the folks back home, because sometimes it's hard to find, I think, particular items like this. And I'm just trying to create awareness with the different qualities of olive oil, because they're not all created equal. So if that helps.
Wonderful. And pretty soon we'll be able to purchase this in as the ships are coming over from Italy to bring us your delicious olive oil.
Exactly.
As you're doing this here, you're making this recipe. Is this something that your family would have regularly? Is this something that would be special occasions? You talked a little bit about how, people would come over in the morning for coffee, and, different relatives would be making different parts of the meal. Is this something that you would see prepared more regularly for families within the Italian cultural context?
The simple version of it is something that, we would eat in the family, okay? But then if we had relatives over or something like that, that's when you would kick it up and add shrimp or add the sausage, if that makes sense, because it would make the dish more rich, let's say. And so you always, when you have guests, you want to give the best that you can to them, if that makes sense. So does that answer the question?
Yes, it does. And you're making everything now. Dana, you're making your onions and you've got your sausages there, and everything's kind of being prepared simultaneously. Is there any any advice for somebody who's cooking this at home, in terms of how you do it? Like, is it about an hour to prepare all this together, or what's your general timing when it comes to making an Italian dish like this?
I think about an hour is a good estimate. Depends how organized you are in the kitchen. So, the zucchini part, depending on the quantity that you're making, and I typically allow for about 1 zucchini per person. These are small, so I'm doing 2 per person, okay? But one thing that's real important, I'm going to saute the onion here, and I'm using some knob onions, so, the long onions with the green stem, okay? I love using these because you can cut them into round pieces, and the zucchini is going to be cut round, so it all kind of harmonizes with the dish, let's say. And I'm going to throw some garlic in. I have 3 small pieces. I'm not even going to cut it up. I just want it in here for flavor, so it's going to add flavor, and then I'm going to take it out later on. I'm also going to add a pinch of forte, which is basically crushed red pepper. It's a little bit of heat, okay? This is just a slim layer of heat. You can adjust as you want to, but I start off with something just really, really simple. Because I want it to be there, but I don't want it to overpower the dish. I want it to just complement, okay? And so we're just going to get this going, a little saute. And while that's going, I'm going to slice up my zucchini.
Diana, a little bit about your family. You were born in the United States. You moved back to Italy. You have such an interesting story. and you come back and forth between Northeast Ohio and Italy, and it's
Yes.
you've made a life of travel.
Yes, I
And
have.
yeah, and can you talk about that a little bit, because you sound like you're living a life that a lot of us wish we could live.
That's wonderful. I thank you, Joe. I've always had an incredible passion for travel. I've always had an incredible passion for Italy, the heritage, the history, the culture, the language, the food, the people, the scenery, just everything that it has to offer. And I love America because that's what I know. I was born and raised there, but I always had one foot on both sides of the ocean. And so when you grow up that way, you kind of have a little bit of an identity crisis because, you know, especially I was growing up in the 1970s, let's say in Cleveland. And so not everybody had olive oil in their kitchen, let's say back then. Okay. Olive oil was a staple in our kitchen. To try to sometimes explain that to people, they didn't know what that was. Or just, how can I explain it? Certain strictness. My father was born here in Italy, so he was very strict. He didn't believe in, let's say, girls going out on the weekend. The boys could go out, but not the girls. You know, to try to explain that to my friends that had more freedom than I did. But it was okay because when I would come here to Italy, then I would say, okay, that's how it is here. So now I understand more of who I am and where I come from. And so you strive to create a balance, let's say. And I've been fortunate throughout my life that, number one, my parents gave me the opportunity to understand Italy and the culture here. I had grandparents on my dad's side here, aunts, uncles, cousins. So I had the influx of both amazing cultures. I wouldn't trade that for the world.
Beautiful example here of cooking all on here in Italy with Diana. So as you're making this dish, Diana, would there be a specific wine that would go with this amazing meal? Would there be
yes. So I love to pair this with Greco di Truffo or Falanghina. Falanghina, those are two crisp white wines that come from the Campania region. Even a light Prosecco could work with this dish. If you like a little something bubbly or frizzante, all of those could work well. But, you know, if you're a traditional red wine drinker, something light, maybe again from the Campania region, like Aglianico could work. Mm-hmm. I think that would be a good compliment or even a Montepulciano, that could definitely work. Okay.
Montepulciano.
So I'm going to be adding my zucchini that I've cut in round pieces to the onion. And
now, Diana, when this is happening, are you usually playing some music in the background? Are you a quiet chef, or are you somebody who likes to kind of like make it a little bit of a party every time you cook?
No, that's a great question. When I'm alone, I will crank up the music and sing because I'm alone, you know, and I'm very mindful of my music. I love a lot of international music. Of course, I love Italian music, a lot of Italian music. I grew up hearing opera on Sunday mornings. That's how our dad would get us out of bed in the morning on Sundays. He would blast, you know, his Caruso and all that. We'd hear all the opera music playing. But I love all sorts of music.
Diana, in terms of speaking Italian, I know it was something that you grew up with. When you moved to Italy, was your Italian basically so up to speed that you were able to communicate, or was there a period of time when you had to kind of learn a little bit more about the language?
Absolutely. So I did grow up with the language. My dad spoke more English with us, even though he was the one born here, because he had a small business, and so he always wanted to make sure he was up on the language, etc. But when our grandparents were around, that's when we spoke more Italian. I also chose to study it when I was at John Carroll University. So for 2 years, I did study the Italian, and that basically put the grammar in perspective for me. And then coming here so often, and then I started doing business here. And so I think that my Italian knowledge just increased more and more over the years. So yeah, I was extremely fluent when I moved here. So I still have questions. I still make mistakes. Oh my goodness. You know, and it's so funny because the people closest to you don't always correct you.
Right.
Like they should, or like they could. Okay, so we have our zucchini in the pan. Going to add a little bit of salt and pepper to it. Again, we have the onion already sauteing. And we have our whole garlic in here that we'll remove at the end. Okay. We're just going to keep our eye on this. We're not really frying it. We're just sauteing it. We're softening it. It'll get a little golden. It tastes delicious. The other thing that I want to do today is to make a bruschetta. And I always have fun with this with my friends that, let's say, they don't speak Italian. They have a tendency to call it bruschetta. And so I'm always correcting them. Just take and make it a so, and then you got it. So bruschetta. Bruschetta is really just toasted bread.
Okay.
And the way I understand it, the tradition of bruschetta goes back to the ancient Etruscans. The ancient Etruscans were a tribe, an Italian tribe that occupied parts of Umbria, Tuscany, what's modern day Umbria and Tuscany. And they were a very gentle, peaceful people, and they were overtaken by the Romans. So the Romans came in and basically destroyed them, destroyed much of what they had, built or what they had, and moved into their territory. And they didn't have an organized army, so they couldn't defend themselves. But they have an amazing history. And so the ancient Etruscans used olive oil, but not for food. It was more a medicinal purpose of the olive oil. They used it for lamps and medicinal purposes and to fuel their lamps and whatnot from the Etruscans. The Romans then started to realize the incredible value of olive oil as a food source. So the ancient merchants of olive oil would take a piece of bread, okay, and they would put the oil on it, and that's how they would entice people to buy their oil. And then, of course, the bruschetta, the toasted bread, took on different personalities, etc., throughout the centuries, and we have what we have today. So this is bread from yesterday. Okay, so this was bigger, it was like this. So this is pane da fermo in Italian, so day-old bread, so to speak. Again, we don't throw it out. It's not as soft as it was yesterday, but it's still delicious. So I used some of it this morning to make my breadcrumbs, okay, that we're going to use later. But I'm also going to use it to make a bruschetta for you because I want to show you, again, some of the versatile things that you can do. I'm just doing a very, about a 3/4 inch slice of bread, okay? 1/2 inch, 3/4, whatever you like.
Did you bake that bread, Diana?
Oh gosh, no. It's almost not even worth it to make bread here because there's so much good bread out there to buy from the professional people that have the bakeries and whatnot. Okay, we're going to make it real rustic. So we have our 2 pieces of bread. I'm just going to put it in the oven under the broiler. Of course, if we had like an outdoor grill
Right.
You know, whatever you have, you use. Okay. Keep our eye on that. And again, going back to the concept of not throwing anything away. Using day old bread is giving life to it again.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's always something very attractive.
Right. And then do you find that the there you go. Wow, look at that. Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
oh
that's
my
just
goodness.
sauteing up. It smells amazing. Okay, our sausage is done. I'm going to actually take this. Here's the sausage, again, very simple.
My gosh.
Okay, we're going to put this on the side for a minute. Okay.
As your bread is in the broiler and the zucchini are sauteing and the sausage is simmering.
Yeah.
The smells of Rome here in Cleveland, Ohio.
Exactly. So it's good to over here. And we're going to make our breadcrumbs. Okay, so we just have this small Teflon pan. And I'm using a couple of different oils. So this is my olierola, okay? But it's infused with hot pepper chilies, okay? So this has a little bite to it.
I was wondering what that was. I thought that might have been your brandy.
No. We're going to use a little bit of a mixture with the olierola, simple olierola, okay? And I'm going to get this going. Don't want it to burn. One thing I have to keep in mind about a very high quality olive oil, it can burn a little bit quicker than an olive oil that doesn't have as much quality, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So you have to really keep your eyes on it. Olive oil in general burns quicker than, let's say, a peanut oil or something. That's why you can fry in it, and I do fry in it, and everyone before me in my family has fried in it. But nowadays, I think people lean more towards like a peanut oil or
yeah.
Okay. All right. I have my little breadcrumbs here. We're just going to toast these in the pan.
Now, have you thought about when you prepare this, Diana? Is it something where, you know, in Italy, because there's just so much wonderful food, people cook to the seasons? You know, is there like just kind of like a rotating list of dishes in your head, depending on what's available at the market or, you know, what your family can provide from the farm?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So again, you know, there was a time here in Italy, and it depends where you go to. Like if you go to a market, you're only an open air market, you're going to find only what's in season. If you go to, let's say, a grocery store, just like in the States, you're going to pretty much find everything all the time. Okay, because they just make it and they bring it in from everywhere, even though it's out of season in your immediate area. But people who are very committed to just staying true to the organic and, you know, kind of 0 kilometers, you know, type of attitude will stick to what's in season. But in the summertime, oh my gosh, the vegetables, the zucchinis, the eggplants, the tomatoes, the fresh fruits, just all that. In the springtime, the fresh mozzarella that comes out, you can find the fresh mozzarella all the time, but then there are certain ones that you only find like in the month of April or May. Mm-hmm. You know, pasta is a staple all the time. It's just how you dress it. And again, it's so versatile. You know, in addition to being so many different types of shapes and sizes of pastas and cuts, you also have so many different ways to dress it. Right. The meats, of course, more in the winter time, veals and things like that. Fish, if you're by the seaside, you're going to eat fish 365 days a year if you want, because it's available. So if you're in the mountains, you're eating more of the meats and chicken and things like that, aged cheeses. So, but always variety. I think that Italy, for it's not a huge country, about 60 some million people, but geographically, I think about the size of the state of California. However, the culinary variety here is endless. So you see this, the bread just totally absorb the olive oil, and I'm toasting it just so delicately. Don't want to burn it. Check on this bread. Oops. It's toasty. Okay. So glad I turned this off. Okay, perfect.
And as you're preparing this, it's always, it's interesting because we were before we were on this call, and I was reading a little bit about our sister city in Vicenza. It's interesting because it was established in the 1st century, and it's part of the Veneto region of Northeast Italy. So there's all these different, cultural and architectural and musical and different parts of a beautiful country. As you said, it's not a large country, but it certainly punches well above its weight. And it's interesting because Cleveland having such an amazing and historied Italian community. The sister city is relatively young. It's only since 2009. So I think a lot of people, Diana, who are watching your show and their taste buds are waking up to what you're doing. A lot of people are really waking up to our deep and rich and glorious Italian heritage and culture here in Cleveland. And it's just really interesting to see how you're bringing that to life now with this cooking.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, and yes, Vicenza is a beautiful city, absolutely beautiful city. It's kind of like a little jewel in the region of Veneto. And I just think, I'm curious actually, how is it that they became a sister city of Cleveland? How does that whole process work?
Great question. As you know, there's a lot of different manifestations of Italian culture here in Cleveland, whether it's my friend Matt Zone and the community he lives in near Our Lady of Mount Carmel in the Detroit Shoreway neighborhood, or Little Italy right there with Holy Rosary on your University Circle, or the Italian community that's throughout. So basically a group of people will go to the mayor and say, we are either from this city or there's a relationship that exists between the cities, and we want to honor the culture. And we do that by creating this bond between cities, piece of legislation. And then people decide, well, this is going to be the place where we really focus our energy in terms of creating the Cleveland to Italy and Italy to Cleveland bridge. So Vicenza was selected. A lot of pomp and circumstance happened, a lot of wonderful events in the Italian Cultural Garden, which is one of the most beautiful cultural gardens we have in Northeast Ohio, along Martin Luther King Drive. And so the relationship between Vicenza and Cleveland, it may be young, but it's definitely strong, and it's definitely got a rich history.
I see that. I see. Fantastic. Well, great choice. Absolutely a great choice. So let's see, these are still not crispy enough. So it's kind of toasting there. Okay. The zucchini is still going. In the meantime, I'm going to make our tomato salad. So I've got our bread ready here, okay?
Wow. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
All right, now I have these delicious, I guess you could call them grape tomatoes, okay?
Mm-hmm. Wow, so red.
They're really, yeah. If, let's say, end of summer, into fall, when the tomatoes in Cleveland are fantastic and amazing. I can remember when I had an office downtown Cleveland, there was a gentleman in my office who grew those beautiful beefsteak tomatoes.
Oh, yes, yes.
And I would say, Mike, just bring those tomatoes in. I'm going to bring the bread. Salt and pepper and olive oil. And that was our lunch, because it was just delicious.
Yes.
So I remember when I was 6 years old and I came to Italy. It's the first trip I remember, okay? And came to spend 3 months with my grandparents. And it was kind of a reunion, you could say, because my cousins from Toronto came and my brother and sister, my mom. And it basically was 4 women, so my mom and 3 aunts and 13 kids. And we were like banshees. I mean, our grandparents spoiled the heck out of us. And we ran free, we ran crazy. You know, we were between the ages of about 4 and 14. And so at about 5:30 in the afternoon, and remind you, we would sit down at 1 o'clock and eat a huge meal with pasta and second course and side courses and fruit and dessert sometimes and all that every single day. It didn't matter what day of the week it was. And around 5:30 or so in the afternoon, 5:30, my grandmother would round us up and she would take that big loaf of bread and she'd be there cutting it like this towards herself. And she would produce these big slices. And we had a choice of either having bread with Nutella, you know, the Nutella, the chocolate spread. Nutella is to Italians what peanut butter is, let's say, to Americans.
Yes.
Or with fresh tomatoes and olive oil. So she'd have these overripe plum tomatoes, okay? I always chose the tomatoes and bread. 6 years old. But that's what I wanted. You know, the Nutella was fine too, but I really, really wanted the bread and tomatoes because that's what spoke to me.
Yes.
And she cut open those tomatoes and she'd rub it on top of the bread and then pour olive oil and sprinkle salt on top. And oh my gosh. And we go out and sit outside and have our merenda, our snack.
What did you call it?
Merenda.
Merenda.
Merenda is a snack. Yeah. I'm going to show you. These have crisped up really, really nice. Okay, so these are done. So we're taking those off the flame, putting those on the side. Here's what we have is the starting for our bruschetta topping. Okay, so these are fresh tomatoes. They're so sweet and delicious. And I'm going to use the coratina. Okay, so wish you could smell this. I do put a healthy amount of olive oil because what we're going to do now is let these tomatoes kind of marinate a little bit. They're going to fester a little bit with the salt and the olive oil, a little bit of pepper. You could throw a clove of garlic in here. I don't know if I would chop it up. You could, but I prefer not to. Just going to mix this up. And I'm going to let this sit for a bit because I want these tomatoes to kind of throw their juice out a little bit. Okay? Yeah. And that's what's going to make our bread delicious.
Beautiful.
So that's going to sit for a minute.
All the sounds and the smells and the sights of this unbelievable meal presented to us today by Diana, who's not only an amazing friend of Global Cleveland and all Clevelanders, but a representative of the greatness of Italy with her olive oil line and her incredible travel agency.
Thank you. I'm going to grab our water because it's time to start boiling our water for our pasta.
Here we go.
Okay, so we're boiling our water. We have our tomatoes. We'll throw a little bit of fresh basil. Little basil plant. Got to have that always. And is that basil you grew in your backyard? So I have it on my balcony, and I have herbs on my balcony. I have rosemary, parsley. Parsley, I never knew this till I moved to Italy, grows like wildfire in the month of December here. Huh. Who would have thought? It was crazy. The summertime is okay. You know, we're on the 4th floor of a condominium here. So we have a lot of wind on the balconies. But so I know that some of the plants, you know, they can't resist the wind and they don't do well, but a lot of them do well. So month of December and January, the parsley grew from here to here. It was this high. And all the cactus flowered.
Wow.
Oh my gosh. And the flowers last for like 3 months. I was
Oh,
in
how
heaven.
beautiful.
The travel business has allowed me to make people extremely happy.
Mm-hmm.
And I take that very seriously because your heart is changed, your heart is enlightened, your mind, your memory, everything is enhanced when you travel, not just here in Italy or in Europe, but everywhere. And to be able to have a hand in that for people is an amazing, amazing gift. Somehow I was chosen in the universe amongst many other people that do what I do to give this gift to people and to help facilitate a journey that, again, stays with you forever. You know, you can buy a great bottle of wine and you can drink it. It's more the memory that you have when you share that with somebody. If that makes sense. Traveling, I feel really sad when I have single travelers that are just embarking all by themselves, because when they come home, they don't really have anyone else to share those memories with. Yes, you can recount what you experienced, but if you travel with a friend or a family member or a spouse, what have you, you have that in common, and that takes you forward for such a long time.
That's such a beautiful way of describing travel.
Thank you. It's powerful. Travel is a very powerful experience, and you have to be open. You can have certain expectations when you travel, but you have to also expect to be flexible, and you have to expect the unexpected.
Right.
That's the only way you're going to have a successful journey, in my opinion.
Right.
You can stay in all the 5-star hotels you want and be pampered, this, that, the other. But if you don't immerse and you don't let your guard down a bit, and you don't let a little bit of what's around you come into you, into your mind, into your heart, you lose out.
Yes. Yes. That's a great piece of wisdom for people watching this wonderful program, where we're not only learning how to cook delicious Italian food, but listen to your incredible perspective on travel and what it means.
I'm happy to share. I have a little bit of that gift. I'm going to show you the Orecchiette. Okay. This is, I chose fresh today, but you can also buy the dried. Okay. Can you see these? This is, again, sacred to the Puglia region of Italy. Okay. So what's lovely about them, the inside of them is smooth. Okay. But the outside is a little rough. And so they absorb anything you put with them. The sauce, the zucchini, whatever the condiment is, these really absorb that. And that's why the dish is so delicious. Okay. And if you walk through the streets of old historical Bari's right on the water, it's one of the main provinces in the region of Puglia. You have these little ladies sitting in the alleyways making these on huge boards out in the open, and people just come by and buy them, and it's a wonderful tradition. So this is our pasta today. So as soon as our water boils, we will be ready to cook with a little bit of olives, and we'll make sausage. So I'm just putting tomatoes on the bread. So simple. There's nothing more simple than this. And what's important, what gives this the wonderful flavor, you see, I'm putting all of the juices that came out of the tomatoes onto the bread.
Oh, wow. You're using everything like you were talking about earlier.
You have to. Yes, because that's the dressing. That's why it's so delicious. Okay, that's what makes the difference. Every last drop of that you want to enjoy. Then I'm going to finish it off with a little bit of coratina. Okay. Just a little bit, just on the parts of the bread that are still toasted but not are dry.
Unbelievable.
So here's our antipasto.
Oh my gosh. And is that on a bed of basil or arugula? What is that?
Arugula.
Oh.
Arugula. Yeah. So we have the homemade sausage, the olives, and then the bruschetta.
Unbelievable.
Okay?
Unbelievable.
Salt our water and our pasta in. Okay, there we go. Okay. These don't take long at all. It's usually about 5 or 6 minutes. Cover this again. Usually when they start to float, they're pretty done. Here's another one.
Now, when you would serve this, now is this something that you would typically have at lunch or at dinner, depending on
Here in Italy?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
You know, the large meal here in Italy is at 1 o'clock.
At 1 o'clock.
So banks close, offices close, stores in most cities, but if you're in a tourist city like Florence or Rome, they stay open.
Yeah.
But everybody shuts down and goes home and has lunch. If you don't have time to go home or it's too far, then you have lunch with colleagues nearby or something.
Yes.
I would say the average Italian consumes probably 70% of their calories by 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Wow.
And then there is something very light. So it could be just, a piece of fruit and piece of cheese, or a bruschetta. Bruschetta is great for dinner, Yeah. And it's typically later, okay? So dinner's typically later, like around 8:30. In Puglia, they kill me because every time I go down there, they'll say, oh, come on over for dinner. Okay, what time? Come over at 9. But then we really don't eat till 10:30.
Gotcha.
They're kind of on Spain time. Spain is famous for that. So it's comical. I'm going to start to reheat my zucchini. It's still warm, but I'm turning on the flame very low. Because what I'm going to do is take my pasta and put it in with my zucchini and let it all amalgamate in the zucchini pan. Okay.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
And also what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of the pasta water. You go into an Italian restaurant, especially here in Italy, and you notice pasta a lot of times has just a beautiful shine to it. And there's a technique for doing that. You take a little bit of the pasta water, and when you amalgamate your pasta with your topping, okay, with your sauce, whatever it is, you add a little bit of this water, and it makes everything just a little creamier, just gives it a little more level of, I don't know, makes it more special.
That's really cool.
Yeah, so it's just all these little, tricks. By the way, the Orecchiette started, they believe, around the 12th or 13th century, so medieval times. They feel that it was influenced by something that was made similar in the Provence region in France. The one that was made in Provence was bigger, it was more rustic. And somehow, it seems like on the streets of Bari, in Puglia is when it all got a little more refined and became kind of like, such the identified regional dish of Puglia.
Yeah.
That's what I understand about it.
Wow.
So I'm taking the water aside, okay? Yeah. the packages nowadays of pasta tell you how many minutes to cook.
Yeah.
They tell you a little less minutes if it's al dente, if you want it al dente, etc. I always forget to look because when I was growing up, you tasted the pasta.
Yes.
And that's what I rely on. I have friends, they set timers, they have Google, hey Google, put a timer for 10 minutes and all that. These are done. Okay. Okay, I'm turning off my pasta. And I'm going to add it to my zucchini. When I was growing up, my dad never cooked, except he would make a Chateaubriand every once in a while. So you would get the whole filet, okay?
Yeah.
He loved that because he was always fascinated by the variety of high quality meats in America. Love that. And he would go to town with it, okay? Mom passed. She was quite young. And so my dad was left, single. And he retired. And so now he had to kind of learn how to cook. And so he retired back here to Italy, and he would watch some of the cooking shows and whatnot. And he would pick up tips, and he got very good. And I saw him doing this, amalgamating the pasta. And he said, now I understand why everything your mother made tasted so good. Because there's all these little tricks that now I've learned.
Oh, wow.
Acknowledge that.
How the culture travels between generations.
Yes, exactly. So I'm adding a little bit of water, okay? And I want to bring this up to a little bit of a sizzle. So when I took this out of the water, boiling water, it was very al dente, okay? So now I'm giving it the chance to finish cooking, but I'm increasing the flavor, okay? So here's one of those garlics that I'm taking out. Hear it sizzling a bit. Just add a little bit of the breadcrumbs
that you've toasted that are just so beautifully golden brown.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's so interesting, Diana, there's such a perception of Italian cooking and Italian food. You've done everything from scratch, the bruschetta, this, all the way that you're cooking this. And ultimately this is going to be something without a canned red sauce, right? Without something, it's so interesting, the incredible complexity of real Italian cooking.
Well, it's endless. It's just the variety, like I said, and it varies, from region to region.
Yeah.
Very different. Okay. So like Orecchiette, now, of course, everything's available everywhere. But up until maybe 20 years ago, if you went up north, maybe they didn't even know what Orecchiette were. Or if they did, they knew it was something from the South, does that make sense? And so you wouldn't find it in just any restaurant. The cheese, little Parmigiano, a little bit more of that. And
unbelievable. Look at how beautiful that is.
So simple and clean, very delicious.
Pasta by Diana.
I'm going to make the version now with the sausage. So remember, we have the variation. So again, you could almost take orders, like who wants it with sausage, who doesn't, because it's all in one pan like this, which is so much fun.
And for the viewers that are vegetarian, the first dish was for them. And
yes.
For those who are not, the second dish is for them.
Exactly. Okay. Okay, and here's the second with the sausage.
Unbelievable.
Okay.
Diana, you have done us such a wonderful gift of learning about Italian culture and cooking, about you, the beauty of your life, about Marcello, Francesco, that it's bruschetta, not bruschetta. And you are a gift to the community in Cleveland and to Global Cleveland. We just have to say, grazie mille, amico mio.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Joe. Amigo
Thank
mio.
you. Thank you so
I
much.
appreciate that so much.
And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, Diana. And we can't wait to see you. And we will all now be trying to figure out where we can get this dish here in Cleveland.
I don't know if you can.
Thank you.
Buon appetito. Arrivederci.
Arrivederci. Thank you.
Ciao.
Ciao.